Welcome to Manor Lords, where money can solve all your problems. Naturally, I had to find out how to create an infinite money economy that completely breaks the game. And one of the components is these lovely beings. Grethline, Madalena, Anna, Margaret, and their hundreds of friends. And the beauty about these sheeps are, with the proper upgrade, sheep breeding, these sheep slowly multiply. Now, if you're only having 5 or 6, that doesn't do a lot. But talking about 112 sheep and 52 lambs, I'm consistently running out of space for them and need to rebuild more pastures. Now, how does money solve all your problems? Well, your villagers have demands. They want to have a food, a tavern, church, all these kind of things. And in order to get ale for your villagers, you would have to build up a whole ale industry, which takes a lot of workers. Instead of building up a whole ale industry, you could also get your trade post and then just import ale. Now, this sounds kind of expensive in the long run, especially since we have 2 taverns that are essentially delivering the alcohol to the people that we can have our tier 3 citizens. For choice, our tiny sheep are producing something nice, and that is wool. And as you can see, I got 772 wool, and that is being produced by one single sheep farm. These 3 shepherds are, well, farming these poor little lads. I can pretty much assure you, if I would make another sheep farm, instead of having 772 wool, we'd be talking about 1,400 wool. This wool sells for only 2 silver, though. That's not what we want. That's not even the price of 1 tankard of ale. Then again, we have 800 of it, so quite some we can sell. That's where the next building comes in, and we're standing right in front of it. It would be the weaver's workshop. They're going to be turning wool into yarn, and despite having 3 families working in there, we have just 100 yarn right now. Would have to build 2 or 3 more workshops to turn all that wool into yarn in time. Since that already sells for 4 per piece of yarn, still, though, that's not actually what we want to sell to make easy money. We're rather going to be looking at commodities and then at cloaks, because cloaks are actually being sold for 8. That would exactly be what actually ale costs. A very important step to not forget is spending your first 2 upgrade points on trade logistics and better deals. This allows you to have trading routes cheaper build, and better deals reduces the import tariff by 10. Otherwise, meat costs 12 to import instead of 2, or ale 18 instead of 8. In order to create cloaks, we need to take our tiny tier 1 plots and upgrade them to tier 2 by providing enough clothing, food, fuel, church, and water access. And if you then have them transformed, you can actually build yourself a tailor's workshop. And here we're going to be transforming yarn and dye, which is the second resource, into those cloaks. Now, dye you can create yourself by essentially gathering berries with a forager hut on your berry deposit, but that's kind of bound to seasonal shortcomings. That's annoying, so we'd rather import the dye for 4 per. That's okay, because we're essentially selling for 8, then at the same time we're selling the wool, which we have way too much of, for 2, so we're selling for 10 in total, and then we can even sell the excess yarn that we're having for 4. That would be a 14 in total sale for essentially buying dye for 4. That would still be a +2 in, that would be still a +2 in silver if we would simply import ale. But we're importing way more and throwing way more out, because instead of making sure that our people are creating all their own food, we just buy meat, berries, and vegetables, so everyone is always happy, while we're actually exporting eggs, because every single residential building can be turned into a chicken coop. Yes, you would be paying 25 silver to essentially build this, but if you end up having 20 to 30 chicken coops, you'll be making hundreds and 900s of eggs that are consistently all year long being produced, because vegetables only grow when it's warm. The same goes for berries. They kind of run out, and animal deposits run out too. And chickens, they don't care about winter. They still lay eggs, and therefore they are actually laying money, because that's 2 silver per egg. Now, this wouldn't be enough to create this wealth. No, we need to create an even more infinite resource, and that is on the one side wood, because you can make as many forester huts as you want and essentially create infinite trees, which are then being felled by a logging camp and then turned into planks. This is infinite, literally infinite. I mean, trees are being planted all the time, wood is being felled all the time, and at the same time you get planks. Well, planks wouldn't sell for much though, because that is only 2 per plank. We don't want to have that. But what can you make out of planks? And that's interesting. You can turn a 2 silver plank into a 6 silver shield. And that's it. So again, we would be going for our tier 2 buildings here. And then we can make ourselves a little joiner's workshop and essentially create small or bigger shields that then sell for 5 to 6, which means that we consistently actually make shields for money. But this is not the end of it and not the craziest part, since there's something even more valuable, and that would be iron. The problem is iron deposits right here, 144. This one has 4,000 iron. This has 100 iron. And I'm currently building a second village that is only there to essentially create iron ore. Because with a deep mine that you can research, you can essentially create infinite iron ore, which is fantastic because if a resource turns infinite, that's infinite money. But before we had that, we could simply import iron ore for 3 per ore and then go to our very own bloomery. And this bloomery with even one single worker is turning the iron ore into metal bars, which is then in another tier 2 workhouse is being turned into sidearms or spears. And sidearms and spears do consistently sell for 7 and for 8 money. And you don't need anything bonus for this, right? So I can import for 3, but I can sell for 7. And the only thing I have to put in there is 1 or 2 single working families to actually create spears or sidearms, making our economy soar even further into the infinite and beyond. Now, as I said, this whole production process is 2 families, or actually 1 family to make it work. And then, well, I need to produce the firewood, but the firewood is anyways being made for all the families anyways. This would net me, in the case of pole arms, for example, a steady 8+, minus 3 for the iron, which leaves 5 silver over, and I could import bread for this because bread only costs 4, and I'm still making 1+ every single time. And you want to know how many workers we would actually need to make bread? That would be step 1, a ginormous field. That ginormous field would need a farmhouse. That farmhouse can have up to 6 families working there, followed up by a windmill, which also needs another 2 families, into then a communal oven for another 1 to 2 families to actually make bread. And guess what? Bread is very seasonal. Your fields are only working in spring, summer, autumn. They're actually not working in winter, so that's where you're not making any bread at all. Instead, I'll just import it and solve this whole issue with money. Now, you could obviously create a tiny remote village that would just be there to essentially be your bread industry. Possible. Instead, I'm rather using the first development points to turn our basic armor making into advanced armor making, and lastly, master armor making to actually make plate armor and mail armor. And since we claimed a region with a deep mine that does not run out of iron ever, I can now create unlimited mail armor that sells for 8, plate armor for 24, or even just simply helmets for 6 silver. And all of these wares consistently grow my silver income that I could then focus on simply getting more citizens in and providing them with what is necessary for them to grow, to get more granaries, to get more storehouses, to actually focus on the things that matter, that the market stalls are always filled with the necessary goods they're looking for. Because why waste time trying to build up a very convoluted, seasonal, weird industry when you could instead have sheeps that would consistently keep reproducing? The next year, this will have grown by another 20 to 30 sheep, and it just keeps on going. It's an infinite thing. This whole forest will be essentially full of sheeps, full of wool, full of yarn, full of clothes, full of money for me and my growing city, being able to get this probably up to 1,000 villager metropolis easily. And the best part about money, you can buy yourself tons of troops with it to essentially just overwhelm your opponents with crushing force. Don't even need to equip your stuff if you can have everything being handled by simple mercenaries. Highly recommend giving Manor Lords a try, and if you want to see this money industry being built up, here's the video that did it all, or rather a video explaining all the basics